How is it going, everybody? My name is DeMarco, and there has been some speculation circling around that perhaps we might be seeing something soon Starfield related, whether it's a new gameplay trailer, possibly a release date coming, a new interview, something Starfield related soon, maybe within the next month or so, and I'm here to tell you why that's probably not going to happen, because that's a great way to grow your channel, is to burst everybody's bubble and be a general party pooper. So this was a story that came recently. It wasn't big, it really wasn't covered in that many places. I did see that Mr. Matty Plays made a great video discussing the subject. Admittedly, I wasn't even going to talk about it. I just thought it was pretty insignificant, but it does attach to a broader topic that I did want to talk about. It's a nice kind of segue, nice way to pair these two discussions. Anyway, I'm beating around the bush. Essentially, recently it's been discovered on the Starfield subreddit, which, credit where credit's due, those guys do not miss a single thing. I don't think anything could slip past them. That the Steam webpage for Starfield has been updated recently. Originally discovered by Reddit user itjustworks2020, if you navigate over to steamdb.info, this is a really helpful resource if you enjoy sleuthing. You could find quite a bit of information here. I did the sample search of Oblivion, and if we look at just this one alone, you'll see the last update to the game, the 24-hour peak, rating, Metacritic score. There's a lot of things that you can find through steam.db. It's a great resource. But if you navigate over to the Starfield page, then to the history section, you could see all of the changes that have happened to the Steam listing for Starfield, and you'll find 2 days ago, 5 days ago, 7, 10, 19... These updates all within September that have led a lot of people to believe that possibly, maybe this is indication that a pre-order listing might go live soon, among many other things. Prior to that, the most recent update was in August, so Bethesda has been busy. You'll notice that each of these changes refers to the user tags. For those of you who don't know what those are, or maybe you just primarily play on console and don't use Steam that often, basically just a way for Steam to better filter games, so you could sort by any of these categories, and to provide recommendations. If you play games with similar categories, you're more likely to get recommended games with those categories. There has been this noticeable content drought when it comes to Starfield ever since the Microsoft-Bethesda Showcase, really ever since the announcement of the delay, because that threw things wickedly off track, and I'm sure that Bethesda's sitting on information that they would love to share with us. It's just simply not the right time. Towards the end of the video, we'll talk about my predictions of when I expect to see Starfield, but it's fully reasonable that this lack of information, especially after getting that first whiff, that first taste of Starfield details, people are hungry for more. We want to know more, we want to see more of the game, and it does breed this line of thinking where people are going to look for any confirmation bias, realistically speaking, that more Starfield is coming, and unfortunately that's usually not the case. There's plenty of examples of instances where things have been updated proactively, not because they knew something was happening soon, just because these companies knew something was happening eventually, possibly. So it is worth noting, and I want to go through a couple of those examples, right? Some of you might know this first one if you've been following Starfield for a while. You might remember this. If you're newer to following Starfield, maybe you just started hopping along after the gameplay demo. First of all, welcome. Second of all, let me take you back in time to what we were looking at, what we were speculating about before we really knew anything about the game. There was, back in 2020, a EB Games listing for Starfield. It was a pre-order listing. EB Games was accepting people's money. This discovery was made by a friend of the channel, Just Dom Show. He actually exposed this to Bethesda. Bethesda then presumably reached out to EB Games, told them you have to take this listing down, and they did. But it is worth noting, while it's not a one-to-one comparison, it does prove the point that EB Games just knew, hey, eventually the game's going to come out, so we're going to update our website with the listing of Starfield. And mind you, this was before, just for timeline's sake, 2020, we didn't have gameplay for Starfield yet. We didn't have a release date for Starfield yet. We didn't even have the developer diaries, which admittedly didn't show off that much about Starfield. We only at that point really had the teaser trailer for Starfield. That was it. And yet still EB Games put up this listing. Similarly, Nvidia had a leak where I think it was involving their cloud gaming program. And this leak came out that listed a ton of games that were presumed to be available in the near future or sometime in the future. Among some of those titles, you would see things like BioShock 4, right? And NVIDIA, to their credit, did come out and say, hey, these aren't true. We just literally put these up because we expect that eventually some of these games will be available. That's the only reason. It's just on the top of my mind because I watched Lone Vault Wanderer's video on BioShock 4. Check it out if you're into BioShock. It was a great video. But eventually we did learn that BioShock 4 is likely not coming until 2024, but they still had that listing up anyway. Again, it's not one-to-one, but it just goes to prove the point that companies will make these changes, update databases, change listings because they know eventually there's going to be something about these games, these titles. So maybe the Steam listing updates don't correlate to an upcoming pre-order listing or an upcoming game announcement or trailer or release date, that sort of thing. But I have heard in unrelated circles people speculating that Bethesda needs to start their marketing push because otherwise they're not going to be releasing in a Q1 2023 release date. And I don't know how much I agree with that. I actually went back and looked at all of the major news stories and articles and some of the interviews coming from Fallout 4 from its announcement up until its release. You can actually pretty clearly segment Fallout 4's marketing cycle, and it's possible we'll see something similar for Starfield, but I think the delay has changed that, and we'll talk a little bit about it. But let's start off with pre-orders. A lot of people saying about 6 months you should be able to pre-order Starfield. Fallout 4 came out in November. This is about a 5-month pre-order window that you have here, so it's about in the same time frame that people are guessing. The game officially revealed to the world, or shown off for the first time really, June 15th, and then effectively until about August you have interviews. This is kind of the interview segment of the game. Yes, it is marketing material. This lasts until about August. You're getting some new information about the game, talk about romance companions and some other details. Sometimes they're just clarifying things they've already talked about, but it is still marketing. It's not until September you get into what I would call the true marketing segment, right? So you're done with the interviews, or as many of the interviews. Now you're getting into true marketing where you're creating content that can be used either for YouTube ads, TV spots, banner ads on Google or Facebook or those types of things, right? This is that phase, and it begins in September with this Fallout special series, which really goes on until about October. You start seeing bundles popping up. We're now 1 month away from the launch of the game. It's important to note, only 1 month. And now you start seeing some of the big promotional things that are coming. That's why I call it true marketing. They're putting a lot of money behind it to get it out to the world, to the general public. Recommended specs, people wondering, can my PC run Starfield? You had about a month until Fallout 4 came out before we discovered that information. So we do have a bit of a wait here. One of the only 4 trailers really for Fallout 4 came out in October 15th, less than a month before the game. The final special video, October 21st, we're getting really close. And then Fallout 4 goes gold 2 days later on October 23rd. Now, only a handful of trailers were made for Fallout. You have the announcement trailer, the launch trailer, the Wanderer trailer, and of course, the actual gameplay showcase during E3. So not a lot of content being produced. Now, what all of this says to me, and the point I'm trying to get across by showing you guys all of this, is you don't need an extended 6-month marketing window to get all of this information out, especially considering the bulk of the information came from these interviews and was done in a span of really 2 months, from June and July, a little bit of August, that all of these details were coming out about the game. Doesn't require 6 months, and you could compound that with the actual spending, your true marketing period as I called it, in the same time window. There's nothing wrong with that. And these details matter because it all leads to my ultimate verdict, which is that we're not going to see more of Starfield until the Game Awards this year. That is definitively, I am almost 100% confident that is the next time that we see a substantial amount of Starfield. I'm not discounting the fact that maybe leading up to the Game Awards, we might get another developer diary that goes into some of the more specific details that fans such as myself really do enjoy learning about. But the next time we'll get some proper marketing, some proper new trailers, some proper gameplay, and I'm going to even put my money down on a release date trailer is going to be the Game Awards. It's the only time that makes sense. It's the biggest audience that they're going to be able to expose themselves up until the launch of the game. That's the biggest event that they're going to have the opportunity to share it with. And it would be a fool's errand to not take advantage of that platform. You could take a look at the amount of viewers that go and look at the Game Awards over time, peaking in 2021 at 85 million people, an increase from 2020 by 2 million people. That's a lot of faces and individuals that are tuning in to watch these events, and Bethesda would be foolish to not show off more Starfield there. That is the moment where they can make a huge splash, tell the world this is when the game is coming out, this is our final release date, no more delays. We look forward to showing more about the game. And yes, some might be saying, but that only leaves a small window for Bethesda to talk about the game, to fully promote the game. But admittedly, I don't think it needs a larger window. If Bethesda wanted to hold their full marketing push until the Game Awards, it's a perfectly viable strategy. They have around December 10th is when the Game Awards is likely going to take place. That gives them a brand new gameplay trailer, announce the release date, state that pre-orders are live that night. I wouldn't put it past Bethesda to do that. Would be a pretty cool way to show off the game. And then subsequently, you have the rest of December for those follow-up interviews with IGN, Game Informer, GameSpot, whoever you want to talk to. And then on top of that, you have January, February, possibly most of March, possibly some of April, depending on when the game is actually going to release, in order to go through some of your marketing, your TV spots, your live action commercials, whatever Bethesda has in store. If they want to do similar shorts to the Fallout series in some capacity, those types of things can all fall within a 3-month window. But I do want to point out that we've seen this in the past where fans have been really eager and excited for a game coming from Bethesda, or just any game, and they've mentioned how they need to show it off, we need to see more footage. But the reality of the situation is they don't owe us anything. Bethesda doesn't owe us anything, and they're going to market when they're ready. We saw it historically before Starfield was shown off during the Microsoft-Bethesda Showcase. People were saying they need to show things beforehand, they need to show things leading up to it. They didn't do that. Why? Because Bethesda wanted the most eyeballs, the most attention on their live showcase as possible, and that only happens at these big events. In that case, it was a Microsoft-Bethesda Showcase. In this case, they'll be reaching millions, tens of millions of people at the Game Awards, which is why I firmly believe that's when we're going to start seeing Starfield in full force, is then and afterwards, not necessarily before. But I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on what you think of what we've talked about today, when you think we're going to see Starfield, in what capacity, and everything else. It was a pretty loaded video, all things considered. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed Bethesda, Starfield, all that stuff, consider subscribing, and as always, I hope to see you all next time. So long, everybody.